In this series, we're going to take a look at the sometimes iconic, sometimes ironic cover art in video games. A quick look at the designers, artists, and elements that had us back in the day saving up our allowances and begging our parents for a new video game. Behind the cover. BlackThorne. BlackThorne, also known as Blackhawk in Europe, is a video game developed by Blizzard Entertainment. It was released for the Super Nintendo and PC in 1994 and for Sega 32X in 1995. The player becomes Kyle Blackthorne Blaros, out for revenge against the evil Sarlacc for the killing of his father and the destruction of his people. Blackthorne is a side-scrolling action platformer. In the game, Kyle must run and climb around the environment, taking on enemies with his trusty pump-action shotgun. As the game progresses, this weapon can be upgraded to increase the speed and power. To counterbalance these upgrades though, the enemies become much more complex and stronger as well. The game consists of 17 levels within 4 areas. The 32X version of the game adds a 5th area which is not found in other versions of the game. The striking and colorful art style of the game paired with the smooth, lifelike animations really do a great job of pulling the player into the game. Senior art director at Blizzard Entertainment, Samwise Didier, has been with the company since 1991. His work contributing in in-game and manual artwork appeared in early hits like The Lost Vikings, Warcraft, and of course, Blackthorne. Samwise has been involved as an artist and a concept writer throughout his career, and his gritty comic book pulp magazine style can be seen as a major influence throughout Blizzard's catalog. "We haven't changed our style since the very beginning," he said in 2004. "The first orc we ever did in Blackthorne was just a little guy chasing after Blackthorne. But we thought, hey, these guys are cool. So we used that character for our orcs in Warcraft. Artistically, we've always gone for the same sort of goals. We try to keep everything over the top, over proportion, and really colorful. Then we add as much comic factor in as we can." Clearly, the same goals applied for the cover art on Blackthorne. The box art reaches out and grabs you. The gun-toting, steely-eyed superhero is ready to go to war and take you with him. When you see this cover art, you may be thinking, wow, Blizzard's art department really killed it with this one. But you're wrong. While the game they created certainly influenced the design, Blizzard brought in legendary comic book artist Jim Lee to design the cover for Blackthorne. I mean, seriously, folks, you cannot get any more comic factor than this. If you're a fan of comic books, you know that Jim Lee is one of the names in the industry that at a minimum is a Hall of Famer, and arguably could be a face on the comic book Mount Rushmore. Jim Lee entered the industry in 1987 as an artist for Marvel Comics, illustrating titles such as Alpha Flight and The Punisher War Journal, before gaining massive popularity on the Uncanny X-Men series. X-Men #1, the 1991 spin-off series premiered that Lee penciled and co-wrote with Chris Claremont, still remains the best-selling comic book of all time. In 1992, Lee and several other artists formed their own publishing company, Image Comics, to publish their creator-owned titles. During this time, Lee created, penciled, and co-wrote numerous titles including Wildcats and Gen 13 through his studio Wildstorm Productions. Lee briefly returned to Marvel Comics in 1996 to participate in a reboot of several classic characters for the Heroes Reborn project. Feeling that the duties of a publisher left him with little time to be an artist, Lee left Image Comics and sold Wildstorm in 1998 to DC Comics. Since then, he has been responsible for many successful titles set in the DC's main fictional universe like the Batman Hush and Superman for Tomorrow storylines, and books including Superman Unchained and the New 52 run of Justice League. He is currently the publisher and chief creative officer of DC Comics. Jim Lee has had a larger impact on the video game industry than most would expect. In 2010, when interviewed about the upcoming release of DC Universe Online, Lee said, "Not everyone reads comics, although most people know the major superheroes, but the majority of people play video games." In addition to the cover art on Blackthorne, Lee also did the cover art for 2004's Neo Contra. In 2013, Lee designed a new version of the Mortal Kombat character Scorpion for use in the DC fighting video game Injustice: Gods Among Us. He has numerous credits for artistic collaboration and publishing for video games like Batman: Rise of Sin Tzu, DC Universe Online, and even had one of his independently published comic series, Wildcats: Covert Action Teams, released as a video game for the Super Nintendo in 1995. I hope you enjoyed this brief look behind the cover of BlackThorne, a game that in my opinion flies under the radar of many retro gamers. Today, Blizzard Entertainment is a juggernaut in the video game industry, regularly selling millions of copies of their games annually, driven by franchises like Warcraft, StarCraft, Diablo, and Overwatch. However, back in the early 1990s, they cut their teeth on games like Rock and Roll Racing, Lost Vikings, and of course, BlackThorne. Until next time, everyone, take care of yourself. Cheers.